to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Goins here with Johnny Sobchak for a reunion episode of sorts. No, we don't have any guests. Nobody's coming back, but we ourselves are coming back because it's been about 3 weeks at this point since our last podcast. We've had some scheduling difficulties, some traveling, some vacation. So it's good to be back inside the film room with Johnny. How are you, Johnny?
I am doing really well, Zach. How are you?
I'm good. We've got a lot to talk about on this episode today because, like I said, it's been a couple weeks. We've got a huge Marvel release this week. We're talking about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings hitting theaters over this holiday weekend. We've got some catching up to do. And I'm excited because, obviously we're not going to throw it all the way back to the breaking news from 3 weeks ago. But we've still got some big stuff to talk about. And I think we're on a similar page with this review as well. Which always makes me happier because I don't have to play defense as much. So I'm excited to get this thing started.
Yeah, man. I think we're pretty close on this one as well, which is fun. And I definitely prefer to enjoy and have fun at the movies when I go, as opposed to some other recent ones. But yeah, I'm glad to be back. Glad to be talking about some news. It's been a fun couple of weeks, I think, with regards. It's not like a deluge of movie news necessarily, but there has been some big developments that are certainly worth talking about, from release dates to trailers to film festivals. We have plenty to look forward to and discuss.
Well, I know that's one thing that's been keeping you busy lately, talking about film festivals.
Absolutely.
Because on the website, insidefilmroom.com, Johnny has at long last posted something that's been in the works for, I'd say, 3 months at least. I remember you sent me like the first draft back in June. Obviously things have changed since then. But the awards radar, pre-festival Oscars prediction, what's going on over there, Johnny? How do you feel about your piece?
As of right now, because really when the festivals kick off, Venice and Telluride and TIFF starts in a few days, that's the beginning of award season. I mean, technically, because all these films, a lot of them will contend down the line. And then, these festivals give out their own awards, which certainly influence things. And, I did have a very long time to develop that. And there are things that I wrote and included in May, when I really started this thing and kind of had my first draft, that I got rid of. And I think that are going to be accurate now. And then there are some things that I, later improved and included in the last couple of months and it made it into the final draft that I didn't have originally that I think will pan out. So it's kind of like a mixed bag, but I think overall I feel, pretty confident and comfortable with a lot of my choices. And I think, bullishness in some categories and with some, nominees or winners, I think will pay off. And of course it's all for fun. I mean, it's kind of, I compared it to fantasy football and another podcast recently, and it really is. I mean, it's just, don't take it that seriously, but it's fun to kind of like predict and kind of place, hedge your bets and
right,
see what's going to pan out. And yeah, I would definitely recommend, everyone go check that piece out, because I think it's really probably my most well-researched, at least one of them pieces that I've ever written, and it was just a lot of fun to kind of come up with ideas and see where things are.
It's not like you're, okay, I think this movie looks good, so I'm going to put it up for this category.
Exactly,
it's like, in 1997, this movie won X number of awards, which translates to a streak of 17 years in a row where this has happened. Like it's like very analytical, and there are a lot of stats mixed in there. So it's like you said, super well researched, and I feel like it's been well received so far on the Twitter sphere from not to say that you're not a real movie critic or a real awards predictor, but some of the people who like get paid money. I'm sorry, Johnny, you're not on my payroll yet, but some of the people who do this professionally have been reaching out and reposting it, sharing it, doing like really publicizing it and praising you for that. So I'm excited that you were able to put that together and that I was able to at long last get that edited. So I'm sure we'll have, I don't know what your plan is moving forward, but whether it's going to be, if we keep this one as like the September version, the August version, or if you're going to be tweaking it. I don't know if you'll have a new one come later, an entirely new one, or if you're just going to make changes to this. But it's going to be fun to see where these things go and how accurate you can be looking back on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I intend, I think, because all the festivals, they pretty much run through into October, and even some go later than that. Our regional one, for example, I know is later in October. But I think I will write at least a couple other articles, updates of this version throughout the season. So maybe one in a couple of months, and then maybe another one a couple months after that, as we get into January and February, when the Oscars and nominations and the show actually comes up. So that'll be fun, something to keep an eye on for sure.
And I will say that for anyone who follows Johnny on Twitter, you may have some preconceived notions as to what this may be. And I will say I was shocked myself not to see Dune winning absolutely everything. It certainly gets plenty of nominations, but knowing Johnny and his fandom there, I was impressed that he was able to restrain himself from just giving it everything, because we know that's what he would like to have happen.
I got to balance my heart and my head.
That's the sign of a true critic, a true awards predictor. So I'm impressed.
Well, thank you.
Anything else going on in the movie watching, TV watching, anything that's been keeping you busy?
Not especially. I have been really busy with work and kind of getting with my newer job, getting kind of onboarded and trained in some things there. So
when's the big move coming up?
Nothing's solidified yet. Not totally certain. Potentially. I have some things to figure out in that regard. But there was a stretch over the last 3 weeks, as we mentioned, since we kind of were last on here. There was a couple weeks where I didn't watch anything because I was so busy and had some things going on. But last weekend, was visiting my girlfriend.
I think you misheard me here, King. I said, when is the big move? As in to Charlotte, not.
Oh, movie. Yeah. No, I said, yeah. And I said that I don't know yet exactly.
Oh, okay. I thought you were then pivoting back into movies. My bad.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, no, I'm not. I really don't have much to say with regards to moving, although it should be happening in the foreseeable future. I'm just not sure. It could be later this month. It could be next month or a few months from now. But I'm definitely excited about that, though. And but on the movie front, last weekend Candyman came out. I think everyone knows that. It did pretty well at the box office. And my girlfriend and I, when I was visiting, we watched the original because neither of us had seen it, the 1992 film by Bernard Rose. And then we went and saw the new version later that night. And we had fun with it. I mean, I did not it's tough to say. The new one, I was not, I didn't think it was an especially good movie. I prefer the original for sure. I thought it had more scares, like effective scares to it. And I thought that the setup of the mythology was really fun. I thought the sequel was kind of, it definitely kind of follows the story of the first one, but it doesn't really, I think, tell its own effective story with its own well-developed and kind of fleshed out characters. There are some fun scares, and I will say, if nothing else, it was fun to go see it in a theater with pretty much a sold out, auditorium, and people were really like engaged with it and were having fun with it. So, and I think that's a perfect example of, I've been, I think, kind of pushing the theatrical experience, and always will, but I think that's another perfect example. And I've had this happen several times this year where a movie that was not very good the experience was absolutely like amplified by being in a theater with a big group of people, and having that kind of that energy. So it was still worthwhile.
I also saw Candyman, but I was late to the party here. I saw it just this past week on like a Wednesday at 3 o'clock. So I believe, the only one in the theater. So I didn't have that same excitement as you, but I think I definitely enjoyed it more than you do based on how that sounds. I had not seen the original one either, and I was under the impression that this was more of like a reboot rather than a continuation. So I know some of the criticism of this one was that, like, at least I think it was Jake who was saying it in our group, that it spent too long, like basically recapping everything that happened in the first one. And for me, as someone who hadn't seen it, I was like, this is all fine by me. That's totally okay. But I could totally see how, if you were someone who had just rewatched the original one like the night before, then it's like, okay, I don't need this. But I know I don't think I found it to be ever scary necessarily. I feel like there weren't any like big jump scares or anything that was like necessarily like disturbing. But I still enjoyed it. Like I had fun with it. Like you said, I liked it well enough. I think I gave it like 3.5 stars. So it wasn't anything that was like bad by any means, but I thought that the ending was a little bit rushed. It kind of had to
really
unfold.
just
Like I thought that the first 2 acts were like very well paced, set everything up, and then the last third just kind of like unfolded. It like just laid everything out there. It had too much to unpack in too short of a time.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it felt to me more like a mystery, or like a psychological, not necessarily a thriller, but just a mystery rather than a straight up horror movie or anything. But it obviously had those like gory, gruesome kills, so that I guess that's what puts it in the category there. But I liked it. I had fun with it. I had definitely had to read, not having seen the first one. I had to do a little bit of like ending explained reading afterwards, but it was more of just like to confirm everything that I thought, rather than like I have no idea what I saw. But yeah, I would recommend it, especially I've been on kind of like it's September, so that means it's spooky season. So Night House, Candyman, rewatching Silence of the Lambs, like I'm ready. I'm ready for the crisp nights and the scary movies. So
absolutely, yeah. And we have some great, new theatrical horror films coming out. Whether we got Candyman this month, but I think next month, especially Last Night in Soho, Halloween Kills, Antlers. We got some good ones cooking.
Yeah, definitely. On the TV front for myself, I don't know. It didn't sound like you had anything new, but have you been watching What If?
I have not.
On Disney Plus?
I have not. I have been generally keeping up with what's going on, but I have not been watching anything. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's very up and down for me.
Okay.
It's been 4 episodes so far. I'd seen the first 3 through screeners, and then this past one was the first time that I had to watch it like new when it had just released. So first one, I don't remember if we were able to talk about it the last time we were on the podcast, but first one was like the Captain Carter one.
Yes.
Which is like basically it was the same exact plot essentially of Captain America, and then it was like just switching that. So that wasn't like, I was expecting some crazy changes, and that didn't really do it. So I was kind of confused as to why that was the first episode that they chose to use.
Maybe to ease people in. Maybe.
Yeah, but then that second one was great. That was the T'Challa as Star-Lord, and that really just takes everything to like all of the crazy possibilities of what I hoped the show would be. Third one was all right again. Fourth one all right again. So
really,
this past one was Doctor Strange, where basically. I don't tell me if you don't want me to spoil. I don't know if
don't go into detail because I do intend to watch it, but I had heard that this most recent one is the best one so far.
I saw that as well. I don't know, maybe I just wasn't, maybe it was just something with myself, but it was focused about Doctor Strange, and like his car crash happens differently. And so that's just kind of like what launches how he becomes Doctor Strange and what he like what his goals are
Okay.
changed from the original. It's definitely more in line with the second one as far as like just completely altering everything versus
Yeah.
like a small tweak, you know. So I definitely appreciated that part of it, but I don't know. It's fun. It's a fun. I wrote in my review of like the first 3 episodes back on the site, but it's like a fun thought experiment. But I don't think it's like necessarily like must watch TV or appointment TV or anything for me. So like I watched this one maybe like 1 or 2 days late. So it's not like back when Loki was coming out and it's like, okay, you have to watch it in the morning, right when it starts.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
but other than that, I've still, I know I had teased it a couple weeks ago, but I've been binging the OC still, reliving the early 2000s with my TV education, and I'm all in on this show. I love it so much. There's something about it that's just like so simple but like in a good way, not like simple. It's just like TV in 2003 was not nearly as like complex or high stakes as like TV now. And certainly. So it's just like comforting to turn it on and watch. And so I've had a good time with that. And it's just like a dumb teen drama where I'm like yelling at the characters for not talking about their feelings. And it leads to like a 3-episode arc of them having a fight or something. So it's silly, but I really enjoy it. So all right. That's been keeping me busy.
Yeah, no, I can't say I'll ever check out the OC, but I'm glad that's panning out. I know you were a little bit skeptical, I think, when you started it.
Well, it was just that I had been shamed by my friend who's like major TV critic and always tries to get me to change from like movies to TV. And so she was like, I can't believe you've never watched it, because we had been talking about Outer Banks, and she's like, I can't believe you've never watched like the foundational teen drama shows. And so I finally caved in and I'm watching this. And I think I mentioned it last time that it's 2003. So the first season, there's only 4 seasons, but the first season is 27 episodes long and they're an hour-long drama. So I'm like maybe 2/3. I've been watching it a lot and I'm still only like 2/3 through the first season. It's a big commitment.
All right.
Well, shall we get into some news from the last week or so? I know there's some big stuff off the top that you've been obviously keeping track of with your awards radar. What's going on the festival circuit, Johnny?
Oh God, so much, too much to discuss here probably. But Venice was
give us the highlights.
Venice has been the main attraction, I think, so far. Telluride is a smaller, American festival that kind of has no frills to it or anything like that. It's very much runs alongside Venice, and it has a lot of the same titles, but introduces some other ones that'll go on to other festivals like TIFF or New York, for example. But at Venice, to start, they of course had The Power of the Dog, which is Netflix's potentially their big Oscar contender, although it sounds, based on the reactions and reviews, which are very, very good, no doubt. Potentially it might be a little bit more divisive or a little bit more inaccessible than a potential Best Picture winner. But it still sounds like it's an amazing film. Benedict Cumberbatch in the lead, Kirsten Dunst in there as well, potential Oscar nominee, Jesse Plemons, potential Oscar nominee, Cody Smith-McPhee, potential Oscar nominee. So yeah, lots to look forward to there, as well as Johnny Greenwood back composing for films, and he's doing the score on that one, which I'm really excited about as a big Radiohead fan, and I've really enjoyed his scores in the past. And I think Ari Wegner as well, the cinematographer who did Zola earlier this year and looks to be doing something like complete opposite direction as far as the visuals, and is probably locked in for at least an Oscar nomination, which would make her the second woman ever, which would be, it's a horrific stat, but like very, it's encouraging that we could get another one of those soon after Black Panther got the first one. But I'm really excited. Jane Campion, this is her first film in like 12 years or something, which is kind of crazy. I mean, she's one of the only women to ever be nominated for Best Director. I think that's in single digits still, even though Chloe Zhao just won. So that is heartening. And I think that's another film talking about Telluride that is premiering at Venice, but then it's gone to Telluride, it's going to TIFF, it's going to New York. So that one's really doing the rounds, and I think will be a Best Picture, contender, at least nominee, in months from now. We also have Spencer, which is another one that got like a ton of buzz. This is, I guess, kind of a piece of news that we missed out on, but I would like to hear once I kind of wrap up talking about these, your thoughts on the trailers, because the trailers for both of these came out in the last couple of weeks leading up to the premiere. But Spencer is the Kristen Stewart vehicle that everyone has been hyping up for what seems like ages now, of course, with the pandemic and everything. But she's playing Princess Diana. And we've seen pictures of her for a long time now, but we just got, the first footage, and these are the reviews and reactions coming out. It sounds like she's more than lived up to the hype. I think in my awards predictions, the article that I posted before any of these premieres happened, I said that I think she's going to win the Oscar. And I think that I feel very, very confident about that at this point. It sounds like she gives like not just the best performance of the year, but potentially one of the best of the last few years, and will be a tough to top in the years to come, which is super exciting. And not only is this like a star vehicle and just a great acting showcase, but I think Johnny Greenwood, again, scoring this movie, he's probably going to get 2 Oscar nominations after being away from film for a few years, which is really exciting. Clara Mathon, who did the cinematography for Portrait of a Lady on Fire, she is doing cinematography here. She could get nominated potentially for an Oscar, which would be incredible, again, given the history of that category. And then just overall, I think the costume design, Jacqueline Duran, she's been nominated, I think 6 times. She's won a couple times, most recently for Little Women, which was, gorgeous film. I think all around, this is going to be a strong contender. Again, I had this in my Best Picture nominees. That remains to be seen. It could be a little bit more divisive potentially, but I think if it does get some of those tech, below line noms, and Kristen Stewart is like a lock to win essentially by the time it gets to Oscar nominations, I could easily see it getting in. And I even said in my predictions, I think this could get as many as 8 nominations, depending on how the rest of the field shakes out. I think it's a really strong contender. Maybe not to win Best Picture, but I think certainly in the conversation to get nominated. And then really the third big Oscar contender, let's say, from Venice, is Dune, which premiered on Friday, a couple days ago now. And of course, expectations had been through the roof. I mean, it's fair to say this is one of, if not the most anticipated film of not just this year, but the last few years. And it essentially, given the reactions that we had seen, and there's a flood of them. I think Warner Brothers showed this to basically every single person that they could leading up to this premiere. It's what we've all been expecting, and then some potentially, lots and lots of comparisons to things like The Lord of the Rings. Some people are calling, a once in a generation kind of film, epic. And what I think has been most encouraging with these reactions as well, especially with regards to potential awards, contention and being in the discussion for something like Best Picture, Best Director, is not only are people highlighting the technical aspects, which we all expected. I mean, we saw Blade Runner 2049, we saw Arrival, we know Villeneuve has the goods in that department. But I think what has been most heartening, I think, about these is lots and lots and lots of discussion and focus on the performances and the emotion, like surprising emotion potentially for a lot of people, of the story and of the characters. People also very much highlighting the fact that it's very accessible, very easy to follow, even compared to the source material. It's not super, people have called it fast paced potentially, which I think some people were worried about coming into it, especially after 2049, which is very much a slow paced kind of tone poem. I think this is very much more in the blockbuster mode and very much more along the lines of something like A Lord of the Rings, where it's not action heavy, but when the action does happen, it's impressive, and it there's weight to it, and it feels important. So I think it has all the right elements. People talking about it could sweep, it could pull like a Fury Road, where it could win 5, 6 Oscars in the technical categories. And I think if that happens, I would be shocked to not see this get nominated for Best Picture. And I actually just tweeted something before the show talking about the number of nominations potentially that it could pick up, just if you just consider the technical stuff, which I think everyone feels pretty comfortable about at this point. And of course, Villeneuve for Best Director seems pretty likely. I think if it pans out and is, even a marginal success, you look at things like Fury Road, Lord of the Rings, Gravity, from Alfonso Cuarón, other big technical like kind of showcases. All those guys got nominated, and so I think there's definitely a lot of potential there. So, and on top of these, I'll just highlight King Richard, Come On, Come On. Those films premiering at Telluride, as well as Serrano from Joe Wright. And those are all in the mix, along with Belfast from Kenneth Branagh. Those are all in the mix right now, as far as awards, and especially Best Picture, at the Oscars. They're getting glowing reviews, especially King Richard and Belfast, I think, have just the right amount of like kind of prestige and like emotion and like kind of crowd pleasing vibes to get in there. Belfast especially kind of looks like tonally from the trailer like a mix of almost like Roma, because it's a very personal, like semi-autobiographical picture, as well as like almost like Jojo Rabbit to an extent, because it has like this kind of quirky like tone to it, but it also has like this dramatic kind of violent, historical conflict going on in the background. So I think that looks really, quite likely. And then it's also, black and white. So it's kind of going for those technical things as well. And the performances seem really strong. King Richard, Will Smith, probably going to win the Oscar at this point. It seems pretty unanimous that he's very, very much liked in this role. Serrano from Joe Wright, a musical, historical, it's an adaptation of this old French kind of musical comedy, dramedy with Shakespearean vibes. Peter Dinklage could get nominated potentially. I think that would be pretty awesome. Everyone loves him. He seems very well liked. So I think that's a strong possibility. Also, of course, with a big musical, something from Joe Wright as well, who's done historical dramas and epics. I think there's a lot of technical potential there. Production design, I had it getting nominated for that. I think that seems likely. Costumes, maybe. And then talking about these other ones, and a lot of these films are going to TIFF, as I said, so they're only going to gain momentum, I think, and that seems promising for those films. And Belfast, as I mentioned, did get a trailer. King Richard got a trailer. I'm not sure if that was before our last show or after, but that's something to talk about as well. And Serrano, we're still waiting to get a trailer for that, but I would imagine it'll probably be in the next foreseeable future, because people are starting to see the movie now. So yeah, it's crazy. We're like really, it's the heat of it right now. A long ways to go, but it's really exciting to get kind of the first impressions and the way these reviews are rolling in. There's not really been a bad movie yet.
I was going to say there's still a couple as well, just based on your article, that have yet to be premiered, that have, I know New York Film Festival has Macbeth, The Tragedy of Macbeth, which you expect to be a pretty solid contender as well.
Yeah.
Which that was a bummer that they made the decision. I was planning on applying to that for us, not necessarily expecting to get it, but they then changed their rules and made it all in person versus offering virtual. So that was a bummer, but
right.
You know what? Film Fest 919 will be here soon. Hopefully we can get some of
I'm really interested and excited to see what they can potentially pull off, because it is such a loaded season, I think, this year, maybe related to pandemic delays potentially, but they have done such a good job programming in the past, and because it's so loaded, there's so much depth. They don't even necessarily need to get the biggest titles to draw attention or to get interest, because there's a lot to enjoy, even if it's not necessarily, like I said, the top contenders.
But I will say that is going down, Film Fest 919, that is October 18 through 24, and you know what happens right in the middle of that. So
oh yeah.
I don't know if we'll be able to pull Johnny out of the IMAX theater wherever he is to have him cover anything at 919, but
we'll see.
We'll have to find a way to make that happen. But
absolutely,
obviously a ton of stuff that just has us itching for our opportunity to get to check it out. So hopefully that will come soon and we can get some reviews and some podcasts together for it. I know the Dune content will start flowing here soon, as if it ever stops flowing, but
It never did. It never did.
it never did. Well, let's turn away from the festival side of things and talk about a few trailers that happened this past week, and then one, obviously the big one that we have to talk about since it happened while we have not been podcasting. But let's get things started. Spider-Man No Way Home, at long last, the trailer dropped probably about 2 weeks ago at this point. People had been begging, predicting, making false predictions, and trying to figure out when it was going to happen. It finally did. It's what, the most viewed trailer in the history of Twitter, at least. It like blew Avengers Endgame out of the water in number of views in the first 24 hours.
Did.
What are your thoughts here? It gave us the big reveal. I don't know if it's considered a big reveal since we knew it was coming, but Alfred Molina as Doc Ock is back. We get a little Green Goblin cherry bomb. What, I don't know what you'd call that, a pumpkin bomb. We see flashes of Electro. We see potential Sandman, potential Lizard. We don't see Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire, but
That's true.
that has not stopped any sort of theorizing or speculation. I don't know if people were necessarily expecting that in the first trailer.
Right.
But what are your reactions to this? Is it more exciting, less exciting, underwhelming? What are the thoughts?
You know, I don't want to say underwhelming necessarily, but it was pretty much exactly what I expected. It didn't surprise me. It didn't like thrill me, just because I don't know. I think it's a mix. It's kind of a mix of the fact that we knew that a lot of this was happening, and we were not exactly blown away in that regard, like surprise wise. But if we didn't know that Doc Ock was going to be in there, just we would have lost our shit.
What it would have happened here. But that's just, unfortunately, that's just like not the way that movies.
It's not the way movies work anymore. Yeah.
Right. Like I'm thinking back to 2008 or something. You know, like when we were kids growing up and like going. That I've said this multiple times. Like it's funny when I go to the movies with Rebecca and like 2 seconds into a movie trailer coming on, I'm like, okay, I know exactly what this is. Right. I'm just gonna look at my phone because I've seen, unless it's like something that I'm super into, like exactly, I don't need to see it for the 30th time. But she's like, oh, I have no idea what this is, and I'm like, I miss that, being able to go see a movie trailer for the first time in a theater versus like on YouTube or on Twitter or something the week in advance.
Right.
But I'm with you. Like, I think also part of this particular for Spider-Man was the fact that like literally it had been talked about nonstop 24/7. Like, I'm excited for this movie. I love Spider-Man. I'm a bigger MCU guy than you or Jake or most of the, like, as far as just like going in for the pure enjoyment and not like just going along for the ride. But still, like, you know, okay, it happened. People have been hyping it up as if it was going to be like the greatest thing in the history of the world. And like, yeah, it was good. I'm excited for it, but I don't think it necessarily made me even more excited or anything. Like, I was just like, okay, it came and went.
So yeah, I think that is what kind of blows me away with the whole like views record and the fact that people watch this so much comparative to other things, even like Endgame and Infinity War, which are films that we truly did not know anything really about going into them, or watching the trailers. At least we were very much surprised, I think, and looking forward to what those were going to offer. Coming into this trailer, it seemed like everyone knew what we were going to see, and that there were no real surprises in this trailer, which, you know, I'm not dissing that aspect of it. I think it's a fine trailer, but I just think that, you know, it does concern me to an extent. This is something I tweeted at the time right after the trailer came out, and the vibe that I got based on the trailer itself is that I hope it's not just a, you know, amusement park ride, to use a Martin Scorsese term here, of you know, cameos and nostalgic throwbacks and characters intertwined. I mean, they're talking about so many characters in this movie. I mean, characters that have not been seen in the MCU yet to date, like, and introducing them in this movie. It's just, I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm not saying the movie's gonna be bad. I actually think the movie's gonna be great. I think that people are gonna like it a lot. And I think that it will be, you know, rewarding. But I think I'm just nervous that I think there is a chance that it isn't though. And I hope that Tom Holland's Peter Parker, the Peter Parker of this universe, the one that we have been following and will be continuing to follow for years to come, I imagine. I hope that this is his story and like a compelling narrative for him beginning to end with a start, a middle, and a finish that is satisfying. I hope it's not just a kind of spectacle where it just is not compelling. It just feels like empty, because watching this trailer, it did feel kind of empty. Like when Doc Ock shows up, it's like, all right, like, okay, I know you from an amazing movie that came out like 20 years ago, but I don't, what is the context? You're like, what am I supposed to take away from you showing up? Like, and it's just so, a lot of times, and people have complained about this a lot, but it's just like very visually kind of bland and like disinteresting. I don't know. I am nervous about it. I just think there's a lot of room for error, and I hope people can like acknowledge that, at least if it is an issue. Because right now it just seems like, oh, this is going to be like the most mind-blowing, amazing thing ever. And it could be, like I said, but I don't know if you feel that same way, but that's kind of at least that was my main takeaway. It's just, I felt kind of underwhelmed and kind of concerned in those regards.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you on all fronts there. We'll see if it lives up to the hype. I hope that it does. And I'm with you that I hope that it's not just fan service, like a Rise of Skywalker level of just like jamming as much like as many Easter eggs or many cameos as possible in there, but instead something that actually continues the story forward.
I think we'll know within the first 5 minutes, if Poe Dameron shows up and he's like, somehow Green Goblin has returned, and that's just like that. I think that would be concerning. I think we could all agree.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, we'll see. But I will say one trailer that happened this past week that has done the opposite of Spider-Man, that has gotten me more excited for it, was the final trailer for No Time to Die. I know this is a movie that was the first big one to take the delay back during March of 2020, the first one to like make that move, and has since then made plenty of moves. But we have been assured that No Time to Die will be coming out in just a couple weeks now in October, and we got the final international trailer for it. And this is a movie that I was very excited for back when it was supposed to initially come out, and then like because of all of the delays and everything, it was just like it kind of like lost some steam. They'd done all the marketing already, and I was like, okay, I know it's coming, but I can't get excited for it if like there's nothing new being shown. I don't really know when to expect it or anything. But they've ramped it up again in the last couple of weeks, and every time that I see that, I was just talking about trailers, and if it's something that I'd seen, I'll usually just like stay on Twitter or something during the previews at the movie. But this is one that puts my phone down, because seeing it in the theater on the big screen, this movie looks absolutely nuts. And every time I see the trailer, even if it is the same thing, I get more and more excited for it, because I loved Casino Royale, loved Skyfall. And again, I think we've mentioned this previously, the James Bond movies with Daniel Craig are on a up and down pattern. And so after Spectre, this one's supposed to be back up again. So I've got very high hopes for No Time to Die. I don't know if you're just tired and ready to see it, but I am still getting excited for it.
Well, it's funny because with this, there are two trailers, and I'm not going to be able to discern which one was which, because there was a US trailer and there was the international one. I did see one of the new ones in the theater. I would imagine it was the US one, where it's like a trip down memory lane showing his beginnings, and then it gets into the new movie. And I just thought it was interesting how all the old footage that they show from his adventures as Daniel Craig's Bond, almost none of it is from Quantum of Solace or Spectre. It's almost purely Casino Royale and Skyfall, which are by far the two most well liked, and I think the two best films of his. But they do a good job. I think it's really exciting. Both the trailers are phenomenal. Seeing the one that I saw in IMAX was gorgeous. I can't wait. Like, my excitement has really kind of gone up, I must say. Because for the longest time I just had to continue writing it off as getting delayed and delayed. I couldn't like maintain that hype like I could maybe for Dune, for example. But I do
Right.
trust that this movie is going to be great. I think it's going to be a really, I think satisfying conclusion to his tenure as Bond.
Do you think he's upset that obviously like even before this movie, it was like, will we get another Daniel Craig James Bond? Like, is this going to be it? And like, we are now pretty much, I don't know if it's like officially confirmed, but like everybody knows this is the last one for him. Do you think he's upset that like he thought he was finally getting out of James Bond in like 2020 and now he's like perching on 2022 and he's still having to wear this title, but the end is near for him. So
Right. I think he's fine. I think right now I feel like he's pretty much at peace with it. I think he is certainly more at peace, I believe, than the producers of these movies, probably, because they are just dying to stop burning money, delaying this and delaying it. And I think that is why we are going to see it come out. I think this is, the Shang-Chi numbers have come in. Candyman did really well last weekend. Free Guy has been doing well. All, theatrical exclusive films. And No Time to Die is certainly going to be the biggest out of all those and is also going to be theatrically, exclusive worldwide. I think this movie is going to be massive. I think this could be the biggest movie of the year box office wise if, for example, maybe Spider-Man gets delayed or they move or do something with those other movies. But I'm excited. It's going to be huge.
Well, one final trailer to talk about from this past week. We don't have to spend too much time on it, but we got the first look at Red Notice coming to Netflix in November, I believe. This is, of course, the one that has been was originally advertised as the biggest Netflix movie ever, only to then be replaced shortly thereafter by The Gray Man. But Red Notice, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Gal Gadot, Ryan Reynolds, international crime espionage. What are the thoughts here? I think again, this is going to be one where I'm more into it than you are, just because of my my DTRJ fandom.
Yeah, no thoughts, head empty on this one.
No thoughts, just vibes. I feel like that's part of this movie, though.
Not good vibes, I'll tell you that. Watching the trailer for this felt like just a nightmarish fever dream of all the worst things about Netflix original films, like action films, rolled into one. Of course, you have the added benefit, I would imagine, for most people, of including The Rock. I think this is his first Netflix film. I could be wrong. Ryan Reynolds, of course, did Six Underground with Michael Bay, which that was supposed to be the launch of kind of a big franchise for them. They're like, no one liked this movie. It has to be pretty bad for Netflix to say, this one didn't really connect, so we're not going to do anything else with it. And Gal Gadot, I think this is her first movie with them as well. So, it's strange because I think people have also pointed out in any other, even 5 years ago, potentially, there's no way this movie would get made at Netflix. It would be like a huge, theatrical release at some, other studio. But yeah, I have no cares for this at all. I think it looks so generic and just bland and it doesn't look exciting. Like, it just looks so weightless and empty and by the numbers. And it's strange too, because all these actors, Ryan Reynolds and Dwayne, Johnson in particular, I think those two have had so many big action movies like this.
Well, I was gonna say that literally, like, if you've ever listened to this podcast, you know that I love The Rock. That's my guy.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. Like, I'll watch this movie. I'm excited for it, but I don't expect it to be anything fantastic by any means. But
oh yeah,
this movie, so the general premise is that The Rock is the FBI's top profiler. He's hunting down two most wanted criminals. One is Gal Gadot's character. She's like the world's greatest art thief. But what happens is that he catches Ryan Reynolds' character, and then they are working together to then catch Gal Gadot. And so basically, very, very strikingly similar premise to Hobbs and Shaw, which is a movie that obviously The Rock is in and Ryan Reynolds is also in. And then Gal Gadot is in other Fast and Furious movies. So it generic definitely seems to be a common theme here, because what, The Rock is playing The Rock's character, then Ryan Reynolds is Jason Statham, and then Gal Gadot is Vanessa Kirby, if you're going by the Hobbs and Shaw blueprint.
Right.
But again, I'm still excited for it. I'm very tired of the Ryan Reynolds shtick that is just like who he is in every character, every movie. It's just like the same sort of humor. So we'll see if that's too grating and brings, like, if that's enough to overpower my admiration for The Rock. We'll see. Hopefully not. It's November 12th on Netflix. Does this get a theatrical release like Netflix does sometimes, or are they strictly going streaming here? Do you know?
It seems strictly. I can't say I've heard anything about a potential theatrical release. I would imagine, that would be a big point. Even though when they do them, they typically don't go to that many theaters. So most people, I imagine, would not be able to enjoy it in that manner. I certainly won't.
I'm just thinking of the big screen experience. Like, obviously this Netflix is trying to get their blockbusters up, but to then just open it in theaters would kind of negate that point. But speaking of The Rock, we also have some quick pieces of news here to get through. Jungle Cruise is getting a sequel. That's going to be, it's not official. It's official. They're giving it a sequel, but The Rock and Emily Blunt are still in negotiations, I believe. So, I mean, it's obviously, it's going to happen with them too. Nobody wants to see a Jungle Cruise with different characters or with different actors coming into it. They were the big selling point of this movie. I know you still haven't seen that, right? I don't think you necessarily have plans to see that.
Absolutely not.
But I enjoyed it. I definitely thought it was fun. Friend of the pod, Josh Martin, wrote the review on the website. And if anybody knows him, he's the classic film buff, and even he was charmed by it. So I think that this is good news for it getting a sequel. This is one of their hybrid releases that was in theaters and on Disney Plus Premier Access. So obviously had enough success on both of those methods to warrant a sequel. So I'm excited for it. I'm not dying to see it or anything. I didn't leave the theater begging for a sequel, but I can't say I'm surprised for it, and I'd definitely check it out when the time comes. But that's Jungle Cruise 2. Who knows what's going to happen there? But Tom Cruise does not have as good a luck as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson right now, because he's got some unfortunate delays. We were so close to Top Gun Maverick coming out later this year, but now that has been pushed to May 27th, 2022, while Mission Impossible 7 is pushed to September 30th, 2022. So the only good news here is that means we can both start and end our summers with Tom Cruise action blockbusters. Johnny, doesn't that sound great?
It does. I mean, that's the perfect time of year for it, right? And I think, I was looking forward to Top Gun purely because Tom Cruise, doing crazy stuff. And, I have no real attachment to the original film. Mission Impossible, on the other hand, maybe my favorite franchise ever. I just really love those films, especially the most recent ones by Christopher McQuarrie. And this one is set to potentially be the best and biggest yet. And, we have to wait over a year now to see it. But I understand why. These are movies that are, it's old, maybe cliche at this point, but they're designed and filmed and everything for the big screen to see it, in IMAX. Both these films, I think, will probably be at least shot or used for that format. And they're always more fun with a crowd too. So I'd rather go next summer to see Top Gun with people who, vaccinated, better, conditions, all that, than try to go in a couple months maybe when it's not so ideal and people aren't, maybe as willing to go as they would be. And you want these films to do well, of course, so that we can continue to get more, especially the Mission Impossible ones. So, but yeah, it's a bit of a bummer, but kind of I was kind of prepped, I think, for it. So not terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen the original Top Gun. I wouldn't say I'm more invested in the Mission Impossible movies than a Top Gun sequel, but like you,
yeah,
it's Tom Cruise doing crazy shit, so I'm definitely gonna go see it. But you know what? We've seen Tom Cruise riding motorcycles off the edge of mountains for Mission Impossible already, so take some more time. perfect those stunts, finish this movie strong so that it can continue to build on Fallout. And no complaints by me. That sounds like a great way to kick off and end the summer next year at the theater. So I'm excited for both of those, no matter how long we have to wait. And while we're talking dates, last piece of news here on the TV front, Johnny is up to speed. I'm up to speed. Succession season 3 officially coming back in October. We knew it was going to be late 2021. And contrary to a leaked cameo video from Brian Cox, where he says that it's coming back, I think he said October 12th. That has not been confirmed. So, which again, I obviously I saw that video on Twitter and I was like, wow, it's coming back October 12th. And then I was like, wait, October 12th. That's a Tuesday. That's not Succession Sunday. So if I had to guess, I'd say either the 10th or the 17th. Again, no idea whatsoever, but it's Succession Sunday. So it's going to be either the 3rd, 10th, 17th, 24th, or 31st. So we shall see about that. I'm super excited. Jake, former co-host, friend of the pod, is currently going through right now, just finished season 1. So we've been kind of getting the feedback from him, and he's loving it as well. So I'm fired up for that to come back. And then season 3 of You, the Netflix serial killer show, will be hitting Netflix on October 15th. So yes. I don't think you haven't watched You, have you, Johnny?
No, I have not.
So maybe, I don't know if it's necessarily your speed, but there will be some good TV to watch in October. And by then we'll be, as well, I didn't put this in our tweet when I was talking about how crazy October is going to be, but last week of September, Survivor kicks off season 41. So we'll be, at least I will be in the midst of Survivor 41 as well during that October stretch. So I'm fired up for October. It's going to be great on TV October, and movie front.
Month of the year, I would say, as far as entertainment goes. And DC Fandom as well. They announced their lineup for that, which will be fun.
Well, I know you just said DC, but let's talk Marvel. Let's talk Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Here we go.
Throughout my life, the 10 rings gave our family power. If you want them to be yours one day, you have to show me you are strong enough to carry them.
You are a product of all who came before you. The legacy of your family. You are your mother. And whether you like it or not, you are also your father.
I told my men they wouldn't be able to kill you if they tried. Glad I was right.
The first big screen exclusive in phase 4. This in many ways, this kicks off phase 4 of Marvel. I know we've gotten TV shows. We had Black Widow, which was in theaters and on Disney Plus, but also set during phase 3. So it feels like at last we are finally getting this new era started. Did you feel the same way, Johnny?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's very much a new part of this universe, and getting to diversify it. In pretty much every regard, because there are powers in this, there's magic in this kind of that we get to see that has not really been explored before. Parts of the world we haven't really explored before in this universe, and characters and creatures. It's pretty much a smorgasbord of expansion, I think, that I was surprised by in a lot of respects, which was, I think that's always a good thing with these movies, because they can be a little bit repetitive.
Yeah, I think this was a very good, we'll get into my thoughts on the movie. Let's lay the groundwork here. So Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, based off of the Shang-Chi comics, first Asian lead, in bringing that to the big screen here with similar to how, I know it's kind of, I don't know if it would be a lazy comparison, but it's an apt comparison, similar to what Black Panther did for Black people everywhere to see representation on screen. This is the same thing with an Asian superhero taking charge and a predominantly Asian cast as well. So off the top, automatic win for inclusion on screen in Marvel, which has been fairly, I would say, fairly. What's the word I'm looking for?
White.
White. I was trying to think of that's the best way to do it. I was trying to think of like a generic straight across same. What's the? I don't even know what the word is there. White's a good one though. Fairly white. But
yeah.
So cast list here, we've got Simu Liu, Aquafina, Tony Leung, Ming'er Zhang, Fala Chin, Benedict Wong, although that's generous there, giving him a credit, because he was advertised and I thought he was going to be a bigger part, but unfortunately he's just, not unfortunately, I was fine with it because this was Shang-Chi's movie and he deserved to be front and center rather than being introduced in some crossover spinoff or anything like that. So currently on Rotten Tomatoes, 92% critics scored. Critics loving it. Audience is as well, 98% audience score. Myself, I'm a little bit below that, 84 out of 100 for me. Johnny, do you have a score you're willing to tack onto this?
Yeah, I'd say it's like a solid 75 or so out of 100.
Okay, so we're similar in a similar ballpark. I gave this 4 out of 5. I think it's towards the top of my list for this year. I haven't finalized anything. Obviously, we've still got a couple months left, but it was very impressive. I came into this with quite a bit of skepticism for Marvel, just because of everything that we've got. The TV shows, they've been good with Loki to underwhelming with the others. We've gotten Black Widow, which was good. It was fine. Nothing special. So I was just kind of at this point where I'm like, am I over Marvel? I don't like, I'm still a fan. I'm still going to see it, but it's like the excitement that was there through Endgame and Spider-Man, like through the end of phase 3, I was just like, maybe that was it for me. Like I'll obviously still follow along, but it's just not the same. So this kind of felt like a make or break point for me almost, where I was like, man, I'm seeing this on opening night on Thursday night, but if I don't love this one, like I might catch the Eternals on a Saturday or something, But I went into this and was very, very, I wouldn't say blown away, but it met my expectations, exceeded them, and I had a blast with this. Thought it was a whole lot of fun and a really well-made movie for let's see, it was 2 hours and change. So for about 2 hours of it, it was a really, really great movie. So I was excited to be able to kind of reignite that Marvel spark within myself here. So I don't know if you had a similar experience in that aspect, but feel free to take it away.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I think. I didn't love it quite as much as you did. I really did like it and had a fun time. I think if nothing else, I think you're going to have fun. It's a very crowd-pleasing, enjoyable, fairly light movie. There are some darker moments, of course. I think it's kind of par for the course with the MCU. But the action is very fun, very engaging. Absolutely some of the best fight choreography we've seen in the MCU, if not the best. Simu Liu, of course, has a kind of like a stuntman background, and he does a lot of his own stunts in this. He looks awesome. He definitely makes them convincing, which is good because some of the action can fall victim to kind of a kind of CG lightweight kind of feel to it in some scenes. But the ones where he is kind of front and center and really engaging with another person, those feel the most believable. But he adds a lot of kind of quality to that. And then of course we have the typical MCU humor kind of sprinkled throughout. It's a funny movie. I think genuinely there are some good laughs in this and some good bits of humor. Doesn't feel like totally forced or totally like over the top. I think it's fairly well balanced. I think in that respect, and talking about a solo movie or an origin story film, where in the MCU, we've had a good number of those at this point. I think this definitely is toward the top of the list. I mean, Iron Man,
right?
I think Iron Man for me remains untopped. I think that is just, it was kind of prior to the MCU in a way, because it was made by Paramount and it did its own thing and it wasn't Disney. kind of running the show. I think that still remains the best and like most engaging for me. But I think this is very close, and it does feel, while there are the same MCU trademarks, I think that they had a decent amount of freedom and were kind of allowed to do certain things that maybe 5 years ago they wouldn't have been. There's a lot of unique qualities to this movie that are able to stand out beyond the typical MCU tropes.
Right, I'm with you there. Let me lay down the very, very generic plot synopsis provided by Rotten Tomatoes before we get into anything more in depth. But Shang-Chi, who must confront the past, that does not make sense. Shang-Chi must confront the past he thought he left behind when he is drawn into the web of the mysterious 10 Rings organization. So that's the one-liner, but let's try and give a little bit more context here. Obviously, I will say this is one where if you're not a committed Marvel fan, you can still go into it. And obviously there's a couple movies you will have wanted to watch just to appreciate it more, but they do a good job of this could be your first time and you're going to be totally fine watching it and be able to enjoy it. There's not like, you wouldn't need to know that back in the very first Iron Man movie that the 10 Rings were the terrorists that kidnapped him, or there are things within this story that the seeds have been planted a long time ago, but it's not like required viewing. We see in that trailer that Abomination is fighting Wong, and it's like, okay, well, I need to have seen Incredible Hulk, I need to have seen Doctor Strange, and it's like, no, it's not. It's okay. But so a little background info: we had known that the 10 Rings was this terrorist organization. They were in the very first Iron Man. They were in the third Iron Man movie when we thought that the Mandarin was the terrorist trying to attack I guess attack the world, as things tend to go in Marvel. But then the rug was pulled out from everyone with the Sir Ben Kingsley stunt, and it being an actor named Trevor, who, spoiler alert, is back in this movie. We'll talk about him in a second. But this is the real 10 Rings. We finally get to learn about the true I would say the true Mandarin. He mentions that's a name he's been called previously, but his name is Wenwu, played by Tony Leung, and it's a great villain right there. We'll talk about the casting choices here in a bit, but Shang-Chi is the son of this international warlord, and he flees to America after being sent on a mission as an assassin. He just decides that that's not the life for him, comes to America and is living as a valet driver, and thinks he's just trying to escape his past, but instead he gets dragged back in when hitmen come after him and his sister. And so now he gets pulled into a war for the fate of the world, basically, which, again, typical Marvel stakes right there. But I want to go back to what you had said about, one of my questions was, how does this compare to other Marvel movies? And then specifically, like you said, other Marvel origin movies, because we got Black Widow recently, which was like a hybrid origin. It was like moving the story forward, but also like laying the groundwork. But we haven't had a true origin story since Captain Marvel. And then even before that, it had been a while since we had some. But I agree with you that it's up there. I think Black Panther and Iron Man are my two favorite origin stories. But this one would be right there in the mix with them.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. And, for all the points that you mentioned, and I've kind of hit on it, it's, it doesn't reinvent anything. I mean, by any stretch of the imagination. We've made the comparisons already. You've mentioned Black Panther. Definitely parallels to Black Panther. Another one, I would say it has strong, not strong, but I saw parallels to was Aquaman, especially. I think I'm not going to go into all the details, but toward the end, I thought especially it felt there were certain elements I thought that felt right out of Aquaman, which was another. This is probably, I would say, talking about just solo superhero movies or like origin movies. We haven't had like a ton, of course, in the last few years, but I think this is my favorite since Aquaman, which I really like, more than most people. So that, I mean, that's praise coming from me. And this
Right.
was, um, you know, I think when you took the, and I have to mention here as well, because I liked Aquaman a lot. Part of why I liked Aquaman so much was the kind of villain of that movie. It's kind of like this familial antagonist in his brother Orm, of course. And here it's these issues that Shang-Chi has with his father, played, by the incredible, like legendary Tony Leung. Like he is one of the more interesting, compelling villains of the entire franchise, I think, so far. He's totally
Definitely.
human. He's totally human. He's not wearing a CG suit. His face isn't obscured by anything. He gets to actually act, and you can kind of empathize with him and sympathize with him. And even though he does bad things, that I will say, I think one of the best compliments I can give this movie is I was sold like 2 minutes into the movie, because one of the first things we see is Tony Leung like murder a bunch of people with these like superpowers that he has, like in this crazy kind of like choreographed CG kind of like mixed fight. And I was like, okay, I'm on board with that. Like I can get behind like what's going on here. Like this is pretty cool. And they were able to kind of keep me engaged with that for the rest of the movie. Whenever he was on screen, that was when I was most like, I couldn't look away. Like I found him very magnetic. And he's one of the best
Right.
actors of all time. So that's a big compliment, I think, and a big asset of this movie, along with the rest of the cast. I mean, I think potentially this could be, we're talking about solo movies again in particular. I think this might be the most interesting, like impressive cast out of all of them. Like I thought pretty much all the characters were engaging and like had things to offer. I mean, talking about Simu Liu, I mean, he's never been in a film before, and he carried this, I think, in a lot of respects. Aquafina did it really well in her supporting role. She had probably the biggest, best laughs of the movie, of course. And it just, I was impressed with the acting and the not just the performances, but also the way that they could win you over, the characters
Right.
themselves. And I thought the writing was, the script could be spotty in some places, but I thought overall, again, it did its job well enough.
Well, a couple points that you mentioned that I want to go back to. But talking about your Aquaman connection, talking about the familial issues, the relationship between father and son, and sister and brother, and sister and father as well, or daughter father. But that I made those jokes earlier about the stakes and saving the world. The world's going to end because this monster is going to come from like the afterlife or whatever and destroy Earth. But that's short. Like that's the final 15 minutes of it. But for the most part, the relationship, the battle between internally with Tony Leung and his relationship with his children, or are they even the brother and sister relationship? But that's the true stakes here. Like, that at the end of the day, it's a Marvel movie. They're gonna save the world. So
Right.
that final CGI battle, which we can talk about in a bit, that's not necessarily where you're on the edge of your seat. But I don't know whether Win Wu is going to survive, whether Shang-Chi and his sister are going to reconcile. What that's what was so good here was that it was like in most Marvel movies where you kind of get that like, okay, it's just this big battle. There's no like true conflict between characters other than like are you on Team Iron Man or Team Cap? Like that kind of like surface level stuff versus something that was truly like compelling with the characters here. So that was a huge part of it for me, and made it feel that made, even though we talked about in our group chat, we talked about like that it eventually devolving into like the CGI slugfest at the very end, that didn't ruin it for me, because those weren't the only stakes. There was still something that felt real prior to that. But going off of that, the casting decisions that you said, I'm not a huge Aquafina fan, and so I was skeptical of her coming because like she can be a lot in the
Yeah, I'm
same
not
way
either.
that like Tiffany Haddish or a Melissa McCarthy or somebody, you know, who like,
Yeah.
or a Ryan Reynolds, who's someone who like plays that same character and does the same type of humor.
Kevin Hart.
Yes, that's a good one. But it was the right amount here. It wasn't anything overbearing. It wasn't like every 30 seconds camera whips over to her for a one-liner or something, which you could expect from a Marvel movie. But I think the best humor here was the surprise return of Trevor, of Ben Kingsley's character. Did you, before we get into the specifics of it, did you like this choice, or were you kind of, what was your, I guess I'm a fan of the original twist in Iron Man 3 where it turns out that he's an actor named Trevor who was being paid to play this terrorist. I know that's a divisive, people think it's, some people think it's dumb, some people like it. What are your thoughts on that one? And then what are your thoughts on bringing him back in this?
Yeah. Well, I'm not the biggest fan of that twist, even though I like Iron Man 3. I know some people hate that movie, think it's the worst.
Right.
I'm not.
I'm
not
a
one of
fan
those
as
people.
well.
I'm not one of those people. I could take or leave that twist. I think that it maybe this movie kind of enhances that almost, like in retrospect, which I think a lot of franchises, if they do well and they last long enough, you get not diminishing returns, but things actually get enhanced that come before, kind of retroactively are improved. And I think this could be one of those things because Ben Kingsley, again, awesome actor. And I mean, one of the best of all time. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Him and Tony Leung are both in this movie. But he is very funny. He gets some of the best laughs. He has an incredible little fella companion that
Yes.
that I think, again, adorable, loved. And he's just spot on, and they really go into, they don't refrain, or like they don't like try to shy away from his involvement in Iron Man 3, or they don't, kind of discount
Oh yeah,
like
it's not like retconning it or anything. It's
Exactly.
fully embracing it and
It's
building
fully
off
embracing
of it.
Exactly. And his his acting abilities and his career, and even some backstory, which is comedic, but it kind of explains the character a little bit more, which is nice. But yeah, I liked it. I knew he was going to be in it. We had heard that and seen that. He was at the premiere.
And he was at the premiere,
shocked.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I was shocked by how much he was in it. Not like a major role or anything, but not just a 2-second cameo either. Which is kind of nice to see, because if you're gonna bring in Ben Kingsley, why not get some use out of him? Yeah, I liked that. I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that the best part was his monologue about his love of cinema and the Planet of the Apes and learning to become an actor. That was just such like pitch perfect delivery of just like the ditziness of his character when he's like, I just couldn't believe that those apes could act like that. And I thought, if they can do that, what can I bring to this world as an actor? And then they try to correct him about like, I didn't know that it wasn't apes riding horses, but they were just, and it's like somebody's trying to correct him and say that it was humans, and then he goes, no, that they were just acting as if they were riding horses.
Right.
I thought that was so funny. And the companion, I'm trying to think, what was his name?
God,
it's just like one of those little like pillow pets, almost like this fluffy little
like it doesn't
guy.
it doesn't have a face.
Right, and that's a joke that they make about it. But another great one when he's during the final battle and it flashes over to him and you think he may be dead, and the fluffy sidekick is pushing at him trying to get him to wake up, and he says, it's called acting, I'm playing dead. Which is a great strategy in that battle for someone who is not very adept with a weapon. But
yeah,
I was a big fan of bringing him back and everything they were able to do with his character. But I meant to mention this earlier. I want to touch on it. Just going back to this as being an origin story for Marvel. One of the things that made it work so well for me was that there is a lot of lore here that is obviously they've laid the foundation for it, but we don't really know any of the details behind the 10 rings or who these people are. But they do a great job of showing, like, show don't tell. It's not like there's an exposition dump or something where someone's just like telling a story and you're supposed to learn in this monologue everything about this character's backstory. But instead, they use a lot of flashbacks. They show the excellent scene between Tony Leung and Fala Chen when it's the origin of how the parents met, and that this woman from her magical village was able to convince the warlord to put his weapons down, and they fell in love and had a family. And you get to see that like wuxia choreography fight scene, but it was more like the wire flying and the dancing and stuff, that it was more, it wasn't just like CGI fist fight or anything like that. But that's just one example. And they have like multiple flashbacks to Shang-Chi's childhood, exploring like his relationship with his mother and what happens there. But the fact that they were able to do that through scenes rather than just like someone explaining it, and that helped keep all of the stuff that we learned here from ever feeling too overwhelming or being confusing. And then also the fact that like there is no, as much as I love Iron Man, like there's him trying and failing, him learning the ropes of how to use his suit, building the suit, coming into the character. But in this, you meet like a fully formed Shang-Chi, who he learns a little bit when he's learning how to combine his assassin skills with the mystical part of things. But for the most part, you meet him and he's already like fully formed. He knows exactly how to use his skills as a fighter. And it's not like there's no training montage. There's no learning to be who he needs to be, which I think are two tropes that sometimes these origin stories can fall into that this movie was able to avoid.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty spot on. It didn't I said earlier, it didn't rewrite the formula or anything, but in that regard, I think that was it's certainly an asset to the movie, and something that I kind of wasn't expecting. Like I did not know that going in, that was how that was going to play out, which was a pleasant surprise.
Agreed. And I know I just mentioned we have both mentioned it, but the choreography, the fight scenes here are some of the best, if not the best, in Marvel. The like hand-to-hand combat is really good. We saw that scene as a teaser, where it's like on the scaffolding outside the building, and it didn't necessarily look great on like my phone watching it on Twitter, but I thought that scene was actually really well done in the movie. And then there's also two sequences that are very, like, for myself as a huge Fast and the Furious fan, I was like, this fucking rocks, because there's the one on the bus and then there's the one where they're escaping from the compound, and it's just like two car chases that are just like, well, I guess one's a fight on a car and then the other one is like more of a car chase. But both those set pieces were huge. They were fun, super thrilling. And I was listening to the Big Picture podcast from The Ringer, and they were interviewing one of the writers from the movie. Let's see. It was what's his name? I feel bad. I have to show credit here. Loading. It was
screenwriter number 3.
No, it was Dave Callahan, who has worked. He wrote Wonder Woman 1984. He wrote Shang-Chi. He wrote Godzilla. I'm not sure about Aquaman, but anyway, it was funny because I thought when I was watching those sequences, I was like, oh, this is straight out of Fast and the Furious. I love this. And in the interview with Sean Fennessy, he was saying that he's a big time, like he's a huge Fast and Furious fan. And I was like, I can totally see him writing this as if it were to be a sequence in those movies, because he was talking about like he's done DC, he's done Marvel, he's done Monsterverse. Like they were asking him like, are there any like big franchises that you would like to work in? And he didn't name anything specifically, but he had previously said he was a big fan of Fast and the Furious. So I could see that maybe that was like an audition maybe to to throw his name in the hat for. I don't know if they've already finalized Fast 10 and Fast 11, but I could see if those two sequences are a sample of what he could do. I think it could be a pretty gnarly Fast and Furious movie.
Yeah, well, you talked about you love that franchise so much, and there were elements of that in here that you could clearly see and say, well, that I like that. That was an asset to the film. But you also mentioned that writer has worked on another franchise, the MonsterVerse, Godzilla, King Kong, all that stuff. And I'd say that's an example of franchise influence on this that was a detriment to the film, and that in regards to the inevitable CGI messy finale. I think we can hit on that real quick too, because that for me was absolutely by far the biggest negative on this movie, and I really do think it kind of knocked it down about half a star for me, I would say.
I'm with you there, because, and the worst part about it is that it was so close. Like,
exactly.
Usually it's like the last third that happens. There's the beam into the sky and the aliens come down and everything just like turns into CGI. But yeah, I would say this is the last sixth. Like, yes, we made it through the final third. Like, the last act was starting, the climax was happening, and we're getting there's some CGI. We're getting like the big battle between the two groups. We're getting a little CGI heavy with the 10 rings as Shang-Chi faces off against Wenwu, but it was tolerable. And then that fight happens and it's like, okay, well, let's have one more fight just in case. And then it just turns into like this like kaiju dragon versus, literally it looked like something out of Godzilla, out of like King of the Monsters. And it felt like a random left turn that deviated from everything we had seen in that movie so far. It just felt unnecessary and forced. Just the face off alone between Wenwu and Shang-Chi would have been enough for me.
Also, I have to say, I was starting to feel, even before we got to this part that we're talking about, I was starting to feel a little, not numb necessarily, because I definitely felt numb by that point of the movie, but kind of disenchanted with the story with regard to the fact that like it was becoming very convoluted and I wasn't really clear on like what exactly it was doing. Like there's this element like where Tony Leung's character, he's being like enchanted and like tricked by something, but it's not entirely clear what that something is. It's just kind of like anonymous and like alluded to a degree, but it not like when it comes out at the end. I mean, I wasn't expecting that. I don't know about you. And it's
it's almost as if it was like a demon or something that's like,
it's so random,
but then it turns out to be like a multi-headed dragon with wings and talons, and it
just felt and it never again, there are elements of this movie that are not explained in any way. The 10 rings, for example, are they don't explain them, they just exist, which is fine.
In the post credits, it seems like that may be something that's coming,
right? That's true, but in this movie they are not explained. And this aspect, I felt, the third act element, the thing that drives everyone to this one location, I felt was just like thrown in, like we need something to get them all in this one place, and it didn't feel. And then once the resolution between him and his father was completed, it just gets completely disintegrated by this other huge CG mess that is going on.
Right. There's like maybe 2 seconds where they like lock eyes as his father is dying, and then it's like, okay, well, let me jump on this dragon real quick.
Yeah, it just did not hit for me. And I'm like, I don't know. I really did like everything else about this movie for the most part. I'm honestly kind of surprised that more people aren't taking issue with this, because the entire movie leads up to this like last 30 minutes or so, and it just goes in a completely different direction. I thought did not work. I mean, with the characters themselves, we get to where we want with them, I think, with the final scene and post credits or whatever, but like, I just didn't feel like it was a rewarding experience in how they kind of got to that point. I think if you end the movie right after the showdown between him and his father, you wrap that up. I think that is a very, satisfying conclusion, because that's what you want to see. It's these two human beings with all this history and all this conflict coming together and settling it. I don't need to see this world ending. They're talking about the universe being ended by this thing, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, why?
And also, like, if it could, like, you could still have that as a motive, and being like, that's the reason why they come to this gate or portal or whatever it is. But
have them
Shang-Chi stops his father before it opens. It's not like you can end it there and not have it open up, and you don't have to introduce this monster.
Exactly. And I think, I was talking about the Aquaman comparisons. I do think that the screenwriter you're talking about, I absolutely think he helped write at least one draft of Aquaman. Maybe he ended up not getting credited, but
it's not on his IMDb page. But
yeah, I remember his name.
He may have been early.
But anyway, I mean, there's a part where our hero is riding in around on this big CG creature, and it is literally right out of Aquaman. I mean, it's identical. And I was like, where is this coming from? Like, how are they, like, why is he able to do this? Like, he is a normal human. Like, I get that he has the rings, but like, he does not have like the knowledge or like natural ability to do like what we're seeing right now. So, and then finally, the way that they wrap up that final conflict with the CGI monster mess, it just felt like random and like kind of like, oh, okay, time to end this. And then it ended. And then that was it. And they're like, oh yeah, he did this. Like, that was kind of cool.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt very, like, by the time we got to the last scene in the movie, I was like, okay, I'm glad that this is how it's wrapping up. But everything for like the last 20 minutes or more, I was like, like I really don't, I'm not really following along with this too much. Which was unfortunate, because I really, really did like it up to that. And I still like it overall for sure. But I think it kind of falls prey to Black Panther. Again, hate to make the comparison, but it's easy because you have this character-driven, fun, beautifully designed movie for the most part. And then when you get to the last 30 minutes, it just goes into a CG mess that you're not. I truly felt numb. Like, I got to the point where my brain was just like off. And I was like, okay, I'll wake back up when this is done, because I know where this is going. Nothing about it's going to surprise me, and it looks ugly. Like, it looks like a mess. I didn't think the effects were very impressive. It was a lot of effects, but I didn't think that they looked especially good. The color was bad. I was just like, okay, let's wrap it up. And again, for a film that relies so much on these awesome hand-to-hand fights, real stuntmen doing real things to each other, I hated that it came down to that. It was the CG rhinos from Black Panther all over again.
Well, I want to talk before we wrap this up about the post-credit scene, but quick, while I have Dave Callahan's IMDb pulled up, he also wrote Mortal Kombat, which you can see some influences of just in the action sequences and the fighting, not the CGI part, but whether it's even just like the weapon that Shang-Chi's sister used was definitely one that was heavily used in Mortal Kombat. And he is a co-writer with Lord and Miller on Spider-Verse 2, so we'll be seeing him there. And also, fun fact, he's 6'7", absolute unit, Dave Callahan. But let's go talk about these. We got two post-credit scenes. One in the mid-credit scene was, I would say, more of a setup than the last one. But the movie ends with Katie and Shang-Chi reuniting with their friends who kind of told them this elaborate story about their lives, and then they criticized them for just being valet drivers, and now they're getting drinks again. And instead, these two are now recounting their wild adventure, and nobody believes it. They think it's a joke. And then Wong comes and grabs them through a portal to come with them. So the post-credit picks up there. And basically, those two, Wong, holograms of Bruce Banner and Captain Marvel, are investigating the 10 rings and trying to figure out what they are, where they come from. And they talk about none of the like materials or substances that make them up are known to people on Earth. That his father had them for 1,000 years, but that they look even older than that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And then like everybody just kind of like Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, gets a call. She's got to leave. Bruce like welcomes them to the circus is what he calls it. And then they go do karaoke, which is a callback to earlier. But
that was fun. Fun.
If I had to guess here, is this like a setup for the Eternal? Like, is it going to be something Eternals related, do you think? I mean, just the reference to it being far older than 1,000 years is the only thing I can connect there.
I'm really not sure what, maybe there's something in the comics that can tell us potentially, because in the comics, I'm sure there's some sort of origin for those rings that we're not privy to. And of course, they could always change that for the movies. I mean, I really don't know. The only other thing I can think of, we're talking about the universe at large.
And also there was the beacon. I didn't mention there was like a beacon related to them. That was like sending out a signal basically.
Yeah. I mean, given the state of everything now, potentially maybe it's referencing or alluding to like a multiversal element that maybe that's to explain where they come from or why they're so old. Maybe they come from an even older, another universe. And that's why there's the tracking bit as well. Maybe it's across dimensions.
I'm reading right here that there's a hint from the comics that could be giving a clue. There's a group of ancient shape-shifting beings from a distant galaxy called the Makluan. Don't know if I'm saying that right, but that the rings could be calling out to them, which could introduce some new interdimensional MCU villains. Or there's another villain that is the Dark Dwellers, which are some of the people who've been trapped in Talo, the mystical city of his Shang-Chi's origins. So could be calling to them as well. Really, it seems like the possibilities are endless with as far as whether it's going to go straight from the comics or something new. But the second post-credit scene, the final one, is showing Shang-Chi's sister, and we were told that she was shutting down the 10 Rings operation, but instead we now see that she has taken the throne. Razor Fist, her father's old right hand, I guess right sword man, is now working for her, and she's revamping everything. And we see that kind of the whole compound has been graffitied, and like her people are taking over, and it says the 10 Rings will return. So obviously it'll be a new iteration of them. Will they be a good 10 Rings, bad 10 Rings, somewhere in the middle? But yeah, any thoughts on that one?
No, not especially.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of like okay, cool. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's more of a Shang-Chi too, rather than a Marvel universe.
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from that, I was kind of surprised by it. I guess I had forgotten they sowed the seeds for her to be wanting her own empire, her own.
I mean, it's like a fraught relationship throughout the movie between the brother and sister, and kind of like she still holds a grudge for him abandoning her, and she's had to become this strong fighter, vicious fighter on her own. But I don't know. I will be interested to see if I could see them kind of being like maybe Val coming into play there, because it seems like they're not necessarily bad, but they're not necessarily good, which seems kind of to be what Val is looking for when she goes after Yelena or US agent, or kind of I don't know if she'd get involved that heavily with the whole organization, but maybe.
Yeah, and there's just so many possibilities, especially now with Disney Plus and all that. I mean, she could get her own mini series or something. I mean, there's a lot of options, and I'm excited to see. I liked her a lot, and this is also her first film too. I thought that was amazing. So she killed it. She did really well, and I'm interested to see where she goes. And I imagine, a sequel to this movie makes the most sense for her to return, of course, and they develop something there that'll be interesting. And the 10 Rings, I imagine, will no doubt be referenced and show up in other shows and movies too.
Well, any final thoughts here? I know we're both pretty high on this movie, 84 for myself, around a 75 for you. I definitely would say, well, you can only check it out on the big screen at this point. If you're comfortable, definitely go and do it. It was a good time. Saw it in IMAX, looked great, felt great with a crowd around me to be excited about the MCU on the big screen again. I didn't see Black Widow in theaters, so this was my first time since Far From Home to catch a Marvel movie on the big screen. But
yeah, likewise.
Definitely recommend it. Thought it was a blast, and we'll be interested to see. I know you mentioned earlier that the financial side of things have looked very good over this holiday weekend. So hopefully that can continue for both the movie and for theaters as a whole. Yeah.
The Disney, I think, CEO said, this would be an experiment to see, if they could do a theatrical only release and have it do well and be successful. And I think that has it's paying out, I think, which is good for people who made the movie and we're relying on it to do well. I'm excited about that. I'd say this is pretty much right middle of the road MCU wise. I think there's like 24 movies now, and I think I ranked this like right around 12 probably. Definitely one of the better solo movies, one of the best origin movies. I definitely recommend it. I had a good time with it. Has its downfalls, unfortunately, mostly in the script, from story bits to certain like dialogue feeling a little bit clunky and kind of awkward. But overall, it's a fun time. It's good action. Check it out.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate the support week in and week out. You're the reason why we do what we do.
Absolutely. So glad to be back. Apologies for the layoff, but we are getting into the season now. This is the best part of the year for movies and television. So really looking forward to talking more about everything that is to come, and to stay in tune with us. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, give us a like on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. You can catch all of our episodes there, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find our social media accounts that I just mentioned at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, wherever you can find a podcast. We are there. And be sure to come back next week. Movie is TBD, but we will be here reviewing something. So be sure to join us. We'll see you then.